Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. Since the coming of Funke to power in 2014, the PCC Steering Committee functions exactly like the Central Committee of the CPDM. Settlement of scores through punitive transfers and appointments to juicy congregations based on loyalty and some strategic positions they are paid for. Recruitment and appointment are tribalistic, and those recruited are warned loyalty or dismissal. That speaks volume. Meanwhile, a Nigerian presidential aspirant has revealed the untold story of the oil-rich Bakassi Peninsula in Indian County being the richest point in the world. The richest point in the world. That's great news, but it's unfortunate how the richest point in the world has more impoverished people. It's obvious the reasons. La Republic du Cameroon's government's greed and lack of concern for the suffering peoples of India, a view on corruption at his peak. Reasons why recognition and sovereignty is the only goal of the interim government led by Dr. Sako. Well, tonight on Undaunted, we will be having the Vice President, Mr. Eric Ateh, with us in the studio to help us dissect through all some of these reports in tonight's exclusive interview with a focus on the interim government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, a pride of Ambazonia. What is the word in the president's speech for the US Africa Summit 2022? But before that, of course, Undaunted, let's have the prime headlines.
All right, today on our prime headlines, we'll look at the story that says the interim government is built of formidable instruments that can handle any storm. Now, this is coming from President Samuel Sako. Also, today we're going to be analyzing his speech to the U.S. African Summit. Also, today, unemployment with Bia's regime brings out bad youth. You want to see they've done around, well, follow us for the story. Also today, our girls are being raped, exploited as cheap labor and promised salaries, and yet they are not paid. Today in our story, we have the BS government developmental aid for bad roads. Of course, we know no electricity, no clean water in this country. Also, a truck crushes all passengers on board a vehicle at Musaka Boya local government area of Fako County today. Why was that? Why did that happen? Of course, it's because of the bad road. Also today, clothes receives snake beaten from angry DDR inmates. I'm sure that you can't wait to get the full details of some of the story. Now let's get the stories in detail.
The media greatly influences society. They inform people about what is happening. It permeates people's lives by creating their own criteria and opinions. In this way, the media moves the masses, creating different social movements.
For over 60 years, the people of Ambazonia were deprived of such privileges. The privilege to enhance their own criteria and opinion. They have suffered cultural genocide for 6 long decades, but not in this age and not with undaunted ABC Amber News on board.
You must understand that wars are fought and won in the media. The speed of the revolution on Ambazonia's quest for freedom cannot be explained without highlighting the diligent use of the media.
Franco-Cameroon colonizers, among other strategic moves, weaponized the media against Ambazonia for so long, and they continue to do so even today. The question would be, how much do the oppressed people of Ambazonia need to counter the media rage?
Indeed, how much more is required to stop the genocide? The carnage in Ambazonia didn't start today. In 1961, 1972, 1984, 1992, Ambazonians were slaughtered in huge numbers and help was not forthcoming. Why? Because the oppressor was the piper in the media.
The good news is we have what it takes to dictate the pace.
Right now, ABC Amber TV is taking advantage of the wonders of multimedia aggressively
to inform the misinformed and disinformed with undaunted and other revolutionary programs bringing into the news untold stories.
Most importantly, to win the media war by taking ABC Amber TV into every multimedia platform.
In a word, where the importance of storytelling can never be overemphasized, Amazonians has to tell her own story, not the other way round.
And like we say it always, Amazonia must narrate her story accurately. We can do this together, you know, right? You are just a click away. The website at www.abcambertv.com, and the steps are quite simple.
With just a click on the website, you can become a club member with so many benefits.
You can also make a one-time donation, advertise and showcase your goods and services at the marketplace on the website.
That was easy, right? You're welcome on board.
And thank you for opting for the winning team.
Sincerest apologies for bringing the news behind schedule today. Remember, today we have an important guest in our studio talking about the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, Mr. Eric Ateh. He's already in the studio, but of course, we had some little power sleep here in our Washington studio. But without wasting much of your time, let's go straight to the news in detail. Now, the worst thing that can happen to former East and West Cameroons is the coming of the CPDM party. This is a destructive ruling party with a Paul Biya as the chairman. This party is responsible for the misery in Ambazonia as well as in La Republic to Cameroon, given that all top administrators of the BS field government are all top party executive members. Now, BS government functions on the basis of the party line. Anything that is deemed beneficial to the party is systematically implemented into the politics of the nation without considering the political consequences of such an adventure. Now, the youth have graduated from the school that prophesies the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, but then there is no tomorrow for them to look up to. Now, Ambazonians, this is where we will begin the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. Of course, I have Star Smart here. How are you doing, Star?
Very well, Oni, and good evening, fellow Ambazonians. The future is bleak, forcing the youths in La Republic du Cameroon to take their destinies into their own hands after the number of persons who will suffer because of their actions. In the Douala, the political capital of La Republic du Cameroon, youths have constituted a terrorizing group called Microbe. They will vandalize the home for hours, loot and deprive people of their belongings with the help of sticks and machetes. And if such an action was to be carried out by Ambazonian youths, they could have, without delay, be addressed by the colonial La Republic du Cameroon authorities as terrorists. Now, why is it with the numerous atrocities of these microbes groups, they have not yet been tagged terrorist, meaning such appellation suits only Amazonian youths.
Now, an existing terror group in Douala, political capital of La Republic to Cameroon, have grounded activities of the neighborhood for hours. Now, the said group called Microbes on Monday, December 2022, caused an atmosphere of chaos. Business owners abandoning all at the mercy of God for fear of their lives. For over an hour, these frustrated Cameroonese under the umbrella name Microbes attack Mbappe, New Bell, Max, and Ndogpasi localities, looting everything on their way, emptying the pockets of those they find on their path. Now, they were found with sticks, cutlasses, they even paralyzed the environment, putting passerbys and business owners on the run.
That is an absolute eyesore. The situation is really terrible and was only remedied with the intervention of the colonial forces of law and order, who came only to meet the unfortunate victims as the boys vanished into thin air. Well, there were security operatives who came into the rescue, even if it was a little late, but then they stepped in anyways. Okay, Paul Biya fashioned a chaotic to Amazonia by declaring war against the people of southern Cameroon. His selfish governance has produced a virus called the microbes that is making life at his own backyard difficult. But they say what goes around comes around. Monday's outing is not the first for this group and will certainly not be the last. It's unfortunate.
All right, I'm moving on with the news today. This very sad story of how our girls, our ladies are now Undaunted has gathered the rights groups are protesting what they call dehumanizing treatment of women and children. Now, victims of Amazonian war taking refuge in neighboring La Republic to Cameroon, the right groups say displaced women and girls are forced into physical and sexual abuse and domestic labor without pay. This revelation Undaunted learned has been made public by the Association for the Fight Against Violence on Women and Young Girls.
Well, Undaunted equally learned that a human rights activist, Jeanette Ebela, described this as very disheartening, adding to the fact that so many women and girls fleeing the scorching Amazonian War of Independence do not find peace, love, and comfort in French Cameroon towns. Madame Ebale says her strong message on Human Rights Day is that civilians should denounce those who physically and sexually abuse women and girls supply Amazonian Liberation War. She says 130 of the roughly 370 displaced females who rushed to her association for help after they were raped or forced into prostitution in the past 2 months were diagnosed with gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis.
Now, 18-year-old Immaculate FOC escaped from Mount local government area in February after the Colonial La Republic to Cameroon military men burnt down a girls' school dormitory at Queen of the Rosary College. Now, she says she spent 2 months living in the courtyard of the Roman Catholic Church Cathedral in French-speaking Douala. FOC adds that a man who promised her a domestic worker job instead abused her sexually, and she worked for 7 months without a dime, living only on a meager 1 meal a day.
Undaunted was reliably informed that the colonial La Republique du Cameroon's government has admitted that children in the war-torn Amazonian face violence, kidnappings, rapes, being forced out of schools and into early marriage, and recruitment by the liberation fighters. When these children escape to French-speaking towns for safety, many become homeless, lack an education, and are forced into prostitution, plantation, street hawking, and petty trading. Some are raped, arbitrarily arrested, and tortured. Right groups say it is difficult to know the number of women and girls whose rights are violated because most victims stay quiet for fear of reprisal, and some have even lost their lives through these dehumanizing vices.
All right, the UN says the separatist crisis in the southern Cameroon's Amazonia that degenerated into an armed conflict in 2017 has claimed tens of thousands of lives and displaced about 1 million people. Human Rights Day, of course, is celebrated every December 10th, the day in which in 1948 the UN General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Southern Cameroon's rights group the protection of displaced women and children from rights and abuses. We continue with our story for and our news stories for today. Remember, we did tell you that we have the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Amazonia in our midst, and because of how should we say sensitive these stories, the first two stories that we've taken today is would want to get his points or his opinion on how best the people who are refugees, especially the girls, can live, or probably how best those Amazonians who are in Douala can also live to stay away from trouble, stay away from being killed. I mean, remember, if you watch that video that we saw earlier on, a boy who was trying to retaliate, I mean, you saw in seconds how he was cut short immediately. But we have the vice president here, who is already in the studio here with us, who is going to air his thoughts and share his opinion by joining this conversation. Mr. Vice President, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, my fellow Amazonians. Good evening, Uncle ladies. I'm glad to be here. I'm quite touched with the video that you played. I just want to say something here that will maybe trickle the minds of Amazonians and bring them to the realization that this is an existential war. I distinctly remember that back in 1984, Godbia came to power in his country in 1982. In 1984, there was a coup d'etat, a foreign coup d'etat. Um, it was purportedly by the former president Amadou Ahidjo. Biya had been taken and hidden somewhere, and while in hiding, after his Republican guards suppressed the coup attempt, he came out and made a speech, and that speech was quite revealing of the kind of dictator he was going to be. I hate speaking that language, but I will just quote one part of the speech. I quote him now. He said, Je me devrais dans un pays démocratique comme le nôtre de porter à la connaissance du peuple camerounais, souverain et maître de son destin. Il importe en effet que le peuple mesure les périls auxquels expose l'ambition de certains individus au mépris des expériences douloureuses qui se sont déroulées ou se déroulent en Afrique et qui devraient inciter à la réflexion. En accédant à la magistrature suprême le 6 novembre 1982, j'ai pris devant vous, Camerounais, le serment solennel de ne pas faillir à mes responsabilités de gardien de la Constitution et de la légalité républicaine. Sur le plan militaire, j'ai décidé de créer un état-major général des forces armées pour laisser à ceux-ci les moyens d'assumer leurs responsabilités à la légalité républicaine. In effect, what he was saying is he has created an army chief of staff, which will now, take its responsibility as a Republican army. So in a sense, he created a state within a state. So Biya's only motivation is to feed his army. The highest paid government officials in Cameroon are the military men and women protecting him. He doesn't care about his population. He doesn't care about what happens to anyone. And to go back to this video and to the plight of our fellow Amazonians languishing in that rotten society, I would just say this. It is very unfortunate. But even before the advent of this war, even before Biya declared war on us, the English-speaking population of what they call a unified Cameroon had been subjected to all kinds of cruelty. In most homes in their country, most of their maids and houseboys, as they call them, were of Southern Cameroon descent, because when people go to school and they graduate and they don't have a godfather in government, they can't get jobs. So in a sense, this is something that had been, but now has gotten worse because of the precarious situation that we find ourselves. I feel my heart really goes out to my fellow Ambazonians who are languishing there. But I will also tell them that there is a way out. I think it's better for you to be amongst your own people than become subjugated to slavery in another man's land. That is exactly what Bia wants. Bia deliberately sent an entire population of 13 villages into Nigeria to become refugees, and is now meting all this abuse on our people in Ambazonia to drive them into French Cameroon, so their children will become francophones, and then after they burn all our villages, they will come back into our communities and start building settlements and settle francophones, thus making Ambazonians, the owners of the land, minority in their own country. That is the plan of assimilation. So I encourage every refugee who is living in any displaced person who is living in La République du Cameroon to go back to your area, go back to your village. I know there is insecurity, but you know what? It's better to die at home than to die in a foreign land where your dignity is not respected. It's a very painful situation, and that's all I have to say about that for now. Thank you.
It is. Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President. Well, we have a couple of other reports which we know you might want to react to. One here is talking about the richest point in the world, as said by a Nigerian aspirant. A Nigerian presidential aspirant has revealed the untold stories of the oil-rich Bakassi Peninsula in Indian County being the richest point in the world. He gave the plain truth in a video that has gone viral on social media, how Bakassi is the breadbasket of the world, how Nigeria and the world feeds Bakassi, how Bakassi has the largest oil and gas deposits in the world. Bakassi has the best teams the world over that supplies Europe, Asia, America. The world's fashion market flourishes thanks to beautiful skins gotten from Bakassi snakes, etc. He spoke on the Brekete family radio and TV show, and the world must now know that the reason why La République du Cameroon wants to kill all Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians, is because of these natural resources which the occupier wants to usurp for itself.
Right, while talking, he gave a history. He says Bakassi Peninsula belonged to Cameroon based on a 1913 colonial era treaty between Britain and Germany. At least three known oil wells span the frontier in the Bakassi local government area in Dian County. He says the La Republic du Cameroon boasts of 200 million barrels of proven oil reserves as of 2016 and proven reserves equivalent to 13.7 times its annual consumption, all tapped from Bakassi local government area. Now, if you look at it critically, it means that without net exports, there would be about 14 years of oil left at current consumption levels and excluding unproven reserves. While undaunted, gathered that the Ambazonian Liberation War is causing enormous damage to the colonial Republic to Cameroon's 2020 to 2024 development plan aimed at optimizing oil and gas revenue. The National Hydrocarbons Corporation (SNH) revealed that.
Well, in the media, it recently published that the SNH indicates investors are reluctant to invest in free mining blocks because of the security crisis, and search operations have been suspended in Bakassi local government area in Dian County, the southern zone. And since 2016, at the onset of the Ambazonian crisis, restoration fighters and the colonial La Republic du Cameroon's military have been sowing death and desolation across Amazonia. The onslaught of insecurity, various distractions, and the halt of public investment projects that ensued created losses for La République du Cameroon's estimated at 800 billion francs CFA.
Now, these estimates were made public by the Colonial French Cameroon's Employees Group, abbreviated GICAM. The Ambazonian Liberation War continues to significantly impact the integrity of one's La Republic du Cameroon state in social integration and the social economic development will continue until Ambazonia is free.
A bona fide Ambazonian activist, Uchiba Nelson, adds that Bakassi, Mentum, Donga Matung continues that these counties are deeply endowed with rich natural resources that have not yet been exploited, and that all the southern Cameroon's Amazonia is rich. But sad to note that only some Anglophones, as he says, are helping La Republic du Cameroon to annex, commit genocide on their own people. Chiba expatiates the Paul Biya at the France Africa Summit, admitted to billionaire Mo Ibrahim in an interview in Paris that La Republic du Cameroon tried to assimilate the southern Cameroon's Amazonia but failed woefully. Chiba cites the case of Frundi, a one-time charismatic Ambazonian political figure who said he wants peace because La Republic du Cameroon's economy is down, meaning that Anglophones must be killed by La Republic du Cameroon in order to sustain their economy.
Right, meanwhile, UN adds that La Republic du Cameroon cries that the Amazonia agro-industrial giants, that's the palm oil, CDC, and Sonara, are not functioning well because of the Ambazonian Liberation War. All these companies are in southern Cameroon, and southern Cameroonians gain nothing from them. All the directors or general managers, especially of Sonora, have been francophones or brainwashed Ambazonians who have even transformed Victoria into a francophone citadel. Well, Ochiba Nelson concludes that Ambazonia shall be free, citing this Nigerian presidential candidate praising Bakassi, the same Bakassi Munzu, Frundi et al. Went to sell to La Republic. Well, you can say that that's already a failed mission.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia.
Markets in the world comes from Bakassi. We have been denied. And then whatever he says, it becomes a holy book. It's a game going on. Bakassi has one of the largest. In fact, what is on Bakassi in terms of oil and gas alone? I don't think there's any person who can quantify. Number two, the shrimps, shrimps is the best in the world.
The shrimps in
Bakassi, the former fishing companies of Nigeria, who used to give employment to numerous Nigerians, today can't go there. Is a no-go area. It's the best in the world. They take it to Europe, to Americas, to Far Asia. It's all from Bakassi. The fashion house in major countries who have been destroying Nigeria, they get their supplies from Bakassi. What are they? Ostrich, snakes, all the skins. The snakes you see there, you can't see them anywhere. Wristwatches, the leather, shoes, bags, whatever that adorn or that is supplying the world fashion markets in the world comes from Bakassi. We have been denied. And today, you cannot practically say that you are managing Nigeria's maritime security minus Bakassi. It's a minus. But then I asked two questions since I came out from prison. You lost Bakassi. Your navy is still in Calabar. You are not unmindful of what is called warfare affecting your warships. What is the name of Nigeria? You lost Bakassi. You have not set back to redesign your national security. Who's Bakassi? Let me tell you one of the games. There's too much, like I say, I need days to talk on Bakassi. When Bakassi was going on, when the matter was going on, a 419 was arranged. During end of the year, there was an arrangement by those who were prospecting to take it away from Nigeria. They sat down and in their evil mind created a gift of global maps, beautifully designed, beautifully done glove. And they gave it to all Nigerian leaders in our foreign embassies, those in here at home, ministers all over, including those defending Nigeria. And we are using it as something we appreciate as a gift. But when down and look at the map, you see the international border boundary given Bakassi to Cameroon.
already.
But we are using it as authority because it's a gift. So even the gift given to us was an exhibit succeeding Bakassi to Cameroon. What's our name?
Nigeria.
How can you be submitting exhibits as international lawyers of repute and you don't even understand?
Oh, our lawyers that went to defend us.
That if they cited no, the other side cited that. It said your acceptance and admittance of the map you use yourself shows that Bakassi is part of Cameroon, not Nigeria.
Oh.
And it's an example.
All right, so you can see all that we've been losing there. But let's continue before we get back to the vice president here. All right, so La Republic to Cameroon, of course, we've known is bent on destroying the culture of the people of Southern Cameroon. Well, La Republic to Cameroon, seeing the respect the people of Southern Cameroon gave to their funds, and in an attempt to reduce the power of the funds, they have decided to make the funds auxiliaries to the colonial La Republic, the Cameroon administration. In this light, traditional events at our palaces are now gradually being hijacked and transformed into official Cameroon events, which is flooded with heavy military deployments. Well, a similar situation is going on at the Macon Fons Palace at the official homage and celebration of the great legacy of the missing king of Macon, His Royal Highness for Ngwafo III. Now, the event has been hijacked and the traditional aspects seem coming at the second plan and not the first, as it was supposed to be the case. Now, it is more unlikely looking like a military event with different contingents and regiments. While such a military presence, if not to kill the tradition of the people of Macon, well, they're going to be seeing some of these clips for yourself so that you can understand exactly what we mean here.
With His Majesty.
Manko! Manko! Hey, no! I want my logo. The loot you're working at my back. If you have to come and just...
Au drapeau! Drapeau Sagat, regardez votre emplacement.
Never go and pass. We still never the calabash is fine. You don't say calabash. Yeah, very far.
Okay. I'm saying it. Report.
I told you, his role was advisory. I don't remember all
because of the military presence there. Of course, the people are scared. Definitely, that we are seeing the military there. But then it's supposed to be a traditional affair, a strictly cultural affair. But then this is what you get. People are not able to attend cultural affairs anymore.
But now you've seen the video for yourself. Mankon Nunkui Abubte, in other words, the official homage and celebration of the great legacy of the missing king of Mankon, His Royal Highness For Aguafo III Sen, has started today, Thursday, December 15th, and run January 15th, 2022. That is a month. The ceremony is taking place at the Malas in Bamenda Ngwe. Paradoxically, La Republic du Cameroon's colonial military groups outnumber traditional dance groups. The colonial La Republic du Cameroon's military has hijacked a traditional ceremony. The heavy military presence is a hindrance to the successful paying of homage and celebrations of the legacy of the missing king of Mankon, as the population is scared of their presence. This is most especially of their atrocities in southern Cameroon.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
Okay, born in 1925, For Aguafo III, SAB of Mankon, after primary education in 1944, attended the Agri Memorial College, Arochukwu, Eastern Nigeria from 1945 to 1950, where he obtained the Senior Cambridge Secondary School certificate. He later enrolled in the University College, Ibadan, Nigeria, and graduated with a diploma in agriculture in 1953 until he was enthroned as the 20th King Fon of Mankon in 1959 at the age of 34. He was the Chief of Agricultural Techniques in Womb. These are the basic details of this Fon. Now,
All
like
right. Yeah. Before we go to the next story, remember we have
Yeah.
the vice president here, and we've handled two important stories so far, and we would want his reaction. You know, the Bakassi story, and so this particular incident, our cultural affair, where the military has taken over. Now, Mr. Vice President, in our report here, where we also gave a video, all right, who do you think, because of course you are well acquainted and knowledgeable with history, who do you think is the rightful custodian of the territory when we talk about the Bakassi territory? Who is the right custodian?
The Southern Cameroons. It's the Southern Cameroons. The thing is, French Cameroon was a trust territory given to the French to administer and prepare for independence. The Southern Cameroons was also given to the British, not as a colony, but to prepare them for independence, irrespective of their development or limitations. That's the only responsibility the British had. However, Nigeria was a British colony because French Cameroon and Ambazonia and other territories that constituted the German Cameroon were German colonies. But after the Germans lost the war, the League of Nations took those territories from the Germans and split it. And so the Southern Cameroon territory was given to the Germans, to the English, to prepare for independence, while the French Cameroon territory, as we know today, the Republic of Cameroon, was given to the French to prepare them for independence. Nigeria, not being part of the Germans, the German colonial establishment in Africa was effectively a British colony, and that is why Nigeria had a governor, a British governor, just like other territories like India and so forth. So when the Southern Cameroons was handed to the British to administer and prepare for independence, they never sent a governor general to the Southern Cameroons because the Southern Cameroon was a true United Nations Trust territory. It wasn't their colony. So how did they administer the Southern Cameroon? They administered the Southern Cameroons together with Nigeria. The Southern Cameroons had to send representatives to the Enugu House of Assembly. So the Southern Cameroons never had a governor general from the Crown of England. However, the territory known as the Southern Cameroon is clear today that Bakassi is within that. But because the Nigerian population had interacted so much for over 40 years with the Southern Cameroonians, a lot of Nigerians who were fishermen actually settled in that territory called Bakassi that belongs to the Southern Cameroons. So during the conflict between the present-day Cameroon and Nigeria, overseen by Kofi Annan, and I think the president then in Nigeria was Olusegun Obasanjo, that territory was given to the Republic of Cameroon, but they are not the rightful owners. It was given to them because they are the ones who are actually administering the Southern Cameroons right now through occupation. So in essence, just because the majority of people who live on Bakassi are Nigerians doesn't make the land a Nigerian property. And just because Cameroon is occupying our territory doesn't make Bakassi theirs either. And that is precisely why we find ourselves in this predicament. We are sandwiched in between two powerful nations, Nigeria and Cameroon, fighting for our natural resources, priding themselves of owning that territory, but neither of them own Bakassi. Because just because somebody comes to your land for fishing purposes and to do business and becomes the majority on the land doesn't make that land their own. So when we actualize our independence and push French Cameroon out of our territory and establish our government in Buea, we will still welcome our Nigerian brothers to continue the activities in Bakassi. But it should be made clear from now on that Bakassi doesn't belong to either of these two countries clamoring to maintain ownership of it. It belongs to the Southern Cameroons. That's one part of it. And the other important thing that you were talking about is the problem in Mancon. The Fon of Mancon has always been an enabler, the former Fon of Mancon. He was the vice president of the CPDM party for years. He is effectively one who has actually lost his moral compass and love for his own people, and prided himself in aiding a foreign country to subjugate his people. Now he has a new successor. All of us can see for ourselves the trend. I'm sure before the former king of Mancon or Fon of Mancon picked this guy as his Fon, I'm pretty sure he schooled him on his modus operandi, that the Mancon fandom supports the Biya regime. It is a total disgrace. And I believe every Mancon citizen, every citizen of Mancon should be ashamed of the activities of their Fon. It is wrong, based on the tradition of the northern zone of our country, for military men to desecrate the sacred grounds of a palace. It is. So if they are there, they are there because they have been invited and because they feel very welcome there. They feel welcome there. So it is it's a very sad situation. However, this liberation fight of us will continue. We'll continue to assert ourselves, irrespective of all the enablers within our territory who have sold their souls to a dictator because of the little crumbs that they are given. We will keep fighting. We will keep pressuring the international community to prevail on the Republic of Cameroon to come to the negotiation table to talk about our total separation. Anyone who lives in Ambazonia, be you a foreign or an ordinary citizen who loves La République du Cameroon so much, no one is stopping you from packing your bags and going over there and live. However, we, the people of the southern Cameroon, are very determined to see Ambazonia free. And that is what is going to happen, no matter what happens. I had a conversation a few weeks ago with somebody, and it asked me what would be the fallback position of the interim government if they don't get that independence. He asked me if we will consider confederation or federation. My response to him was, we are independentists, and we will always be independentists. Those sentiments have been in us for a very, very long time, based on the things that we have gone through as a people. However, if the entire Ambazonia decides to move towards federalism, we will still stay within the independentist caucus. Why? Because we know nothing short of total independence will ever free Ambazonia. Federalism would not. A federalist or a confederationalist is a Cameroonian. That is not why 50,000 of our people died. So any foreign or traditional ruler in Amazonia who thinks they can flirt with a regime in Yaoundé in order to dampen the spirit of our people to give up this liberation quest, I think they are delusional, because it's never going to happen. You know, this is something that is embedded in us, not just by our own birthright, but by the pain that we have endured, by the thousands of people who have died. That is our motivation. We will keep fighting. So the fun of Mancon is wasting his time. All I would say is that the Mancon people should actually bring their fun to order, because what he is doing is contrary to the aspirations of the Amazonian people. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for that. But we have more questions on the Bakassi story. So before we get back to the Macon story and the phone story, we have one or two more questions to ask you on the Bakassi story. Because, I mean, you know, whenever we have you, like we would always say, it's an opportunity for everyone to listen and learn something or two. So please, we would want to just take you back a bit to the Bakassi story.
I have a question in regards to the Bakassi being the richest point in the world, as said by this presidential aspirant in Nigeria. The Bakassi, he said it originally belonged to Nigeria. You know, with his perspective, do you think, because that's like something there, do you think that one day maybe Nigeria might go up against, you know, the Southern Cameroons in a war to claim that particular treasure, Bakassi?
I hope not. Do I have the floor? I hope Nigeria doesn't do that. Nigeria is the big brother of Africa, and they should know better. The fact of the matter is, this is not something that I am saying. Let them go to the United Nations and see the map of the Southern Cameroons. In the United Nations, there is nothing like one Cameroon. There are two Cameroons, French Cameroon and Southern Cameroons. The Republic of Cameroon attained their independence on January 1st, 1960. The Southern Cameroon's independence was voted on and articulated in Resolution 1608, and their independence to be effected on 1st of October 1961. Nigeria's independence is 1st of October 1960. Do you see the correlation? Okay, let me just say this. Because the British Crown wanted the Southern Cameroon to join Nigeria so badly, they decided to do everything to tie up the Ambassador independence in 1961 to that same date, October 1st, with the hope that the Southern Cameroons would decide to join Nigeria in order to squash the possibility of having two separate independent days. So even though both countries attained their independence on different years, it was on the same date and day and month. So you see how it works. So, and that is why when the Southern Cameroons leaders withdrew from the Indigo House of Assembly because of the treatment that they got from that house, came back to Boyo and established a government, and they elected a new prime minister, His Excellency Dr. Emmanuel Indele. Tafawa Balewa had actually really pleaded with the Southern Cameroonians to stay with Nigeria. But they felt the stench of the abuses that they also got from the other side. It is never a good thing to not be in your own country. And that's why the Southern Cameroonians withdrew and they created their own government with a prime minister and a parliament. And so when Britain failed in their desire to reunite Southern Cameroon, so Southern Cameroon will be like a state in Nigeria, they decided to back out from the independence of the Southern Cameroons and instead gave another option, which is you either attain your independence by joining French Cameroon or attain your independence by joining independent Nigeria. There was no third option. So the question is, why will the world give Southern Cameroons the option to join two other independent countries without the option of standing on their own and becoming independent as any other country? Why? It's because of this alienation. The French already knew that there was oil in Southern Cameroon. The British already knew the same. So these two colonial entities were probably looking at the fact that one of us must have this country. We cannot let them be alone. So I think the Nigerian politician who made that statement hasn't really done his homework. What he should do is go back to the United Nations and look at Nigeria's borders on the day of its independence. He will see that Bakassi is within Southern Cameroons. But you know what? The majority, over 80% of the people who live in Bakassi are Nigerians. But if just because you have strangers in your house doesn't make the strangers the owner of your house. So that is just the fact. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Now you've made it clear that originally from the map, it belongs to us. It belongs to the Southern Cameroonians. Now, what is the interim government doing, if they're not doing anything, to ensure that this particular territory that is so rich, that interests everyone right now, those in the block right now who are interested in this territory, what is the interim government doing or going to do, just in case they are not doing anything, to ensure that this particular rich place is not taken away?
The thing is, we have disrupted a lot of things down there, but we also believe in the sanctity of life. We cannot just go into Bakassi and start attacking people because we value the lives of the people who live there. However, the majority of the oil that is being extracted from Bakassi is being extracted offshore. We don't have the military capability to reach those targets. But the fact is, the interim government, if you ask me that question, is trying to free Ambazonia in its entirety so we can attain our independence and retain ownership of our country, which will also include Bakassi. This is why, for almost, I would say, can you imagine a people, you know what I mean, people who have suffered any more than the Southern Cameroons? Why is the world turning a blind eye to our independence? Why is the world turning a blind eye to our own right to self-determination? Because of oil, for 40 years, they tried to integrate us with Nigeria. It failed. For 60 years, with French Cameroon, it has failed. 100 years of subjugation is enough. Now the people are clamoring for recognition. The international community should adhere to the demands of the interim government to recognize the Ambazonia as the 55th nation of the world. And that is what the president was trying to tell the world yesterday. That is what the president was trying to tell Biden yesterday. It is frustrating to see countries who espouse, a sense of freedom and democracy for their own people, but still would deny the freedom of another people. I can't believe it. It's really embarrassing for me to even say it. I believe in America so much. I don't think America should be putting itself in a position where they are actually supporting a dictator. The president asked a very pertinent question yesterday. You, Mr. Blinken, the Secretary of State in America, when you said you will start refusing visas for people who have been perpetrating the war and the genocide on Cameroon to come to the United States. Who were you talking about? If somebody like Betty Asomo could come to this, could be part of this delegation, if somebody like Paul Biya could be part of this delegation, who then are you talking about? This is what I call double standard. You cannot want freedom for your own people, but yet you turn a blind eye to the freedom of other people. Are they so comfortable with the deals that they have signed with La Republic? Are they so comfortable with the deal that they have signed with La Republic? Because America has over 40% of interest. But the thing is, what the president is telling them is that, can you guys hear me?
Yes, but Mr. Vice President, would come to that. We want to give a lot of
I'm
time to
sorry,
that
I
topical
just
issue
got a
because
bit carried away
I'm sure
because
you're talking about
it is a very
you've
annoying
gradually
situation. Sorry
moved
about that.
into the president's speech. That's where he made that statement about who and who should not be invited. But we'll definitely get into that. We want to give that enough time. But let's finish up with some of the national stories we have from the home front, and then we can give an ample time to that story, Mr. Vice President. Please just give us a little more time before we delve into that. In detail. All right. Without wasting much of your time, we will go back to this the story of the phone Ngwanfo the third. Yeah, you were saying something and I cut you short because we needed to finish up some of the questions that we had concerning the Bakassi Peninsula territory. Now that we are satisfied a bit with your answers, we would want to also get your thought. You were trying to tell us more about how the military and how our funds has been militarized on the home front. You can imagine an occasion like that, and then you're having their military all stationed all over. I mean, if we can replay that video for you where the military were stationed all over that particular venue for um, that event, you would see what I'm talking about. I'm just wondering how the people would be comfortable, coming around. Yes, this is a video exactly, Mr. Vice President. Just imagine. We can't even count the numbers that we are seeing. Would want you to on this particular activity and differentiate between what is a cultural event, a social event, and of course a military event. We could have had a few securities, definitely not having an event filled with military. It's almost looking like a military event here. Just take a look at the empty venue, empty chairs, and empty seats all around the place. But then we have here. Let's get your thoughts, Mr. Vice President.
It's been for a very long time, the Republic of Cameroon has always wanted to subjugate its people through subjugating their traditional leaders. When they instituted a system where they actually give some stipends or monthly payments to the funds and chiefs of Amazonia. The fact of the matter is, the one thing they fail to understand is that in our own traditional construct, the people of each village are able to contribute money and give to their chiefs. But if the Republic of Cameroon, being a dictatorial state, decided to work with the chiefs and give them money, give them positions in government in order to pass through them to subjugate their people. If you looking at this video, the reason why I didn't comment so much about it is because it's so disgusting. It looks like the majority of people there are actually the Cameroon military. And the majority of people fighting within the Cameroon military are people from French Cameroon, and most especially people from the same region like Paul Biya. What are they doing in the Mancom Palace? That's why I said before that it's a desecration of our traditional authority and our principles. So what is the fall of Mancom so afraid of? To have invited the entire Cameroon contingent to be there, even more than its own people. So what message does that send? Mancom is it's a huge village and a huge community. They could have easily have 500 people over there. But look at that. There are more military men, armed men, than the Mancom population themselves. So the picture itself keeps reminding the dictatorial regime in Yaoundé and the fun of Mancon that his people are not with him. What he espouses is totally contrary to what the people of Ambazonia, and most especially the people of Mancon, espouse. They want their freedom. But you, as their fun, is eating crumbs from La République and using your authority as their traditional leader to keep them in bondage. So that's what I see. I see a fund that has actually sold out, who is now caressing the regime in Yaoundé because of the little crumbs that he gets, just same like his father before him. So it is a total disgrace. But you know what? I still want to commend the Mancon people, because what I see there is it's like almost a boycott of that event, because there is no way you will have an event in a big fundum like Mancon, and the majority of the people there are military people wearing military uniforms. It's a disgrace to the traditional leader of Mancon, because if his people really believed in what he believed, they would have been the Mancon people would have been the majority on that stand. But the fact that it's mostly military people just tells you exactly what the story is here. But I think that's all I have to say about that for now. I think the pictures speak for itself.
You couldn't be any more correct, Mr. Vice President, especially when you said La République du Cameroun subjugates the people by subjugating their funds and chiefs. Well, in that regard, we also brought a report this week how a fund tricked an Amazonian restoration force, an Amazonian restoration fighter, tricked him to his own demise, told him to come over to the palace, and then when he got there were La République du Cameroun soldiers who just grabbed him and killed him. So this is, I don't know if to say this is fear, like you call it, you say they're scared, or I don't know if it's fear or if it's just them allowing themselves be puppets to this terrorist regime. I don't know what you have to say about this.
It is greed. It's not fear. It is greed. There are other funds in Amazonia who have not succumbed to that arrangement. The fact of the matter is, concerning this general, the general should have known better. You cannot distinguish the fundum of Mancon with La République du Cameroun. They have always been an enabling fundum. They have always stood with Biya. Like I said, the present fund of Mancon, who just succeeded his late father. His late father was the vice president of the CPDM ruling party for years. For years. And even when the SDF came up as a major political party that was tilted towards the Southern Cameroons, he was the main man that stood with Biya to actually make sure that SDF goes nowhere. I know that Frundi also made his own mistakes, but the fund of Mancon is not the only fund in the northern zone. There are other funds who have decided to stand with their people, like the fund of Bafut. They're standing with his people. I know they have done everything to penetrate his palace to no avail. But you know what, though? This situation will be remedied when we totally get ownership of our country. Like I said, it's a situation that we talk about, but I don't want it to drain my energy. My energy is to actually make sure that our men and women who are protecting their communities have the tools they need to do so. I don't want to spend my time talking about an enabler fund who has no regard for his people, who has totally sold out his conscience to the devil. And, it's never, the Mancon chiefdom is never going to change. We hope they do, but they will never change because of the privileges they have enjoyed coming from the regime in Yaoundé. You know what I mean? So if they are part of the regime, I don't look at him as a fun. I look at him as an enabler of the regime to kill his own people. That's how I look at him. He's not a fun. So that's all.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President. Like you said, you really shouldn't spend your time anymore on talking about the enabler, sacrificing their own people for crumbs they get from La République du Cameroun. Well, with that, we'll move on with the rest of our stories for tonight. Undaunted just got a break-in, but developing sad news that a very terrible ghastly motor accident on the evening of December 14th, 2022 at Musaka Boya local government area, Fakol County. The story, there is a video here and would like you to see that though. It goes that the accident occurred at a spot where the Colonial La République du Cameroun dirt disposal company with French acronym HISACAM emptied the refuse. On this fateful day, fire was set on the refuse and the smoke emanating from that fire covered the road, making visibility very difficult.
Well, that appears to be the principal cause of the accident that saw a truck crashing and crushing a full vehicle, killing all passengers on board. At the scene, you can see the truck is on top of the vehicle with all passengers dead and beneath. Now, the road is blocked as the truck is laying full length across the road. Now, as at press time, the number of casualties or the dead has not been tallied, but the damages, of course, are enormous, just like you have seen in the video.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best.
In another development, Clove, an ex-fighter who has chosen to dine with the enemy by sabotaging the fight for liberation. Now, he is not only betraying the foot soldiers of Ambazonia, but he is equally selling well-to-do Ambazonians to La Republic to Cameroon. Well, he feeds from the proceeds of betrayal and is willing to stop at nothing to get more into his pocket. He is one of the fallen from the grace of fatherland to the thinking La Republic to Cameroon is a true partner. Now, you would ask yourself, what an illusion. Well, they should know by now that La Republic du Cameroon only uses sand dumps.
A former Amazonian combatant resident at the Boya DDR Center, Clovis, is now in pain following beatings his colleagues meted out on him on Monday night, December 12, 2022. Using them for his selfish aims, lies, telling, and instigating violence. They also accused him of plotting their downfall by alleging that some are thieves and should be arrested. You addressed us as thieves and want us to be arrested, isn't it? This is one of the inmates interrogating him.
Well, the former combatant then forced Cloves to do a live show on his Facebook page with the wounds on his face. Well, Cloves has been noted for posting pictures of children, women, and family members of separatists caught on their arrest. Well, what do you have to say about that? What goes around comes around. It is evident some few who joined the fight for the liberation of Southern Cameroon had ulterior motives, but time will expose every one of them.
Moving on with our stories for tonight. Recruitments, transfers, and appointments in Funke's version of the PCC are worse than what obtains in the failed La République du Cameroun, a country replete with corruption, a practice on emerging Ambazonian castigate.
Well, since the coming of Funky to power in 2014, the PCC Steering Committee, which is a synod function exactly like the Central Committee of the CPDM, settlement of scores through punitive transfers and appointments to juicy congregation, based loyalty, and some strategic positions that they are paid for. Recruitments and appointments are tribalistic, and those recruited are warned loyalty or dismissal. That is, if one is not loyal and pays allegiance to him and his close aides, they are dismissed. Now, he has balkanized a once vibrant and God fearing church with an inordinate high handedness, arrogating to himself mystical powers to do and undo. And these assertions are confirmed because during his elections to this position, he had been seen campaigning using money, magical influence, and intimidation, exactly the way it is done in the CPDM.
In that regard, we have a must. It says, good afternoon, good people of Aquia Subdivision. It's no longer news that subdivision has been seriously hampered for some time now as a result of the socio-political tense climate, which is further complemented with our wrangling. However, in the area of human resource development, our brother Reverend Funky Samuel Foba has been striving tirelessly to empowering some of our own.
Well, lately Funky Samuel, has employed and posted five. That is Anya Pamela, Mr. Tabe Mukete, Mrs. Ishi Maria, Mrs. Asong Lucy, Mrs. Ija patients in the health service department. They are serving in Kumba, Douala, Yaoundé, and Bafusan, respectively.
Now, last week at his BS, he, Upam Agua, posted here requesting for any of our children who has a degree, either in accounting or banking and finance. Few indicated interest, and one amongst them, Okumo Tatalinda, was selected and featured in the Treasury Department. Now he says, I, Upam Agua, want to ensure the others who could not be selected because it was just one opening shall be considered at the slightest opportunity.
Right before now, the chief shepherd had recruited the following, though listed and not exhausted: Mrs. Paco Christina, Mr. Ige Augustine, Mr. Ezekiel Luther, Mr. Yaban Albert, Mrs. Igele Edith, Pastor Alabo Enoch, Pastor Lasase Gabriel, Tambo Luther, Mrs. Nkwenti Esther, Tanko Loveline, Mr. Fuba Paul, and Day Mercy.
Now, the moderator also facilitated the following who are currently serving in the police: one, Abenayam Malaki, and two, Manfomeka Damien, three, Clifford Aga, four, John Ngendo, line Uku Ivo, two, Ngendo Solomon, three, Ngo Trevor, got admitted into police training school. And he says, my beautiful people of Aquia, we have ignited so much hostility in our various communities in Aquia with devastating consequences. It's high time we join our hands with the Right Reverend Funky Samuel Foba, and if we can not construct roads or build bridges in Aquia, we should secure the younger generations, no matter how small.
Now, for us to effectively achieve this, according to him, says we had to galvanize, sensitize, mobilize, and engage all our top key players to rediscover our individual and collective potentials and play them consciously and effectively in synergy, aiming at changing our narrative. He ends with, may God continue to bless you all. All right, long live Acquire Subdivision. All right, I'm moving on to our most important topic for today. Of course, you know that yesterday the President of the Federal Republic of Amazonia addressed their U.S. Africa Summit. Well, before then, there was a notice he dropped. We'll take that, and right after that, we'll get into the analysis of the speech proper. We want to find out, why did the President, Dr. Samuel Ikonesako, address the U.S. Assembly? What was his intention? All right, we'll get to find that right now. All right, you're welcome back. It has always been the desperate struggle of La Republic to Cameroon to infiltrate the resilient framework of Ambazonia, no matter the price get Republic the Cameroon is willing to pay. While many have fallen into the temptation with the lofty and hypocritical offering of La Republic to Cameroon to betray the resolve for the liberation of Southern Cameroons. All those weak Ambazonians, driven by greed and with an attempt to sell the people of Southern Cameroon to La Republic to Cameroon, have failed. Despite all the failed attempts, La Republic de Cameroon is still not ready anytime soon to give up. And since there will always be the weak and greedy comrades, such attempts will keep coming up.
Well, in that light, the president said so many things further in that regard, and it gives clarity to a lot of Amazonians who need clarity because, I mean, in these times, definitely the president is the one who gives the best clarity to those who. Now, here's the address of President Sako to the people of Ambazonia. He says, "My fellow Ambazonians, our nation is an independent state by every available right and deserves to be recognized. My hope is to impress stakeholders one more time with this deep-stated conviction of every bona fide Southern Cameroon Ambazonian as I make an address destined to the U.S.-Africa Summit 2020. But before then, permit me to say that it is shocking to see how some of those whom we called comrades a few days ago will unfortunately be intertwined into the Franco-Cameroon Bulu-Beti mafia to an invincible extent and to a measure of unthinkable betrayal of our collective desire of emancipation and true freedom. If history teaches anything, it teaches that simple-minded appeasement or wishful thinking about our adversaries is folly. It means the betrayal of our movement and the victims of the carnage ongoing in our homeland. Meanwhile, as La Republic du Cameroon desperately infiltrates our resilient framework with an escalating rage and beat log with the weak Amazonia, he hastens to announce that the interim government has built a formidable instrument that can stand the storms. Our nation's architecture of self-determination will not be dismantled under the leadership of President Sako. Let it be known that he is not ignorant of the vices and consequences of any selfish move that we make today. History will not forget us if all we can do is to have backdoor meetings with the oppressor at a time when we have lost more than 50,000 of our beloved people in a senseless war. And by the same token, sabotage genuine dialogue and or negotiations that should be only in the presence of a third party. Now, this is a plain truth. A freeze now would be a very dangerous fraud, for that is merely the illusion of peace. The reality is that we must find peace through strength, and Dr. Sako is unapologetic with the standards of this interim government, determined to accept nothing less. He ends his amazing speech with "God bless you" and "God bless the Federal Republic of Amazonia."
All right. So I'm sure that if you missed that speech, you'll be wondering. But hey, that particular speech he gave before he addressed the U.S. Africa Summit. Now let's take a deep analysis of that before we get into the Vice President's studio right about now. Now let's look at that. He started by regretting our absence. That is the Southern Cameroon's absence as the uninvited 55th African Nation of the Year in the U.S. Summit. Now, he pleased on Ambazonia to, bypass the error of the omission. That was quite very strategic as their 55th uninvited African Nation of the Year. Now, by addressing the U.S. Africa Summit as the uninvited 55th nation of Africa from an observer's perspective, I hope that the summit will be a moment of sincere and have an introspection around the true causes of anti-Western sentiment sweeping the African continent, just like the president had mentioned. Now, that as well is affecting the Ambazonian struggle if we all are sincere.
Now, because the West sees Africa as a poor continent, President Sako told them at the U.S. African Assembly that Africa is not poor, But then let us be sincere. We are the richest continent in the world. Our problem is not poverty, hunger, and diseases. Our problem can be summarized in three words: corruption, exploitation, and bad leaders in power. Could you say that is wrong? No. And the way forward is to forge alliances that will help the people of Africa to address these key problems. True friends will help you and fight your true enemies, not imaginary ones. Africa is very sick and we know the medicine, and it is local, not imported. We cannot continue to pretend that all Africa needs now is more of the same things that it has had. We cannot also say all countries have problems, so let Africa solve her problems. We cannot.
All right, the president also talked about the French America policies and interests. Well, President Sako boldly told them that the areas that they are going wrong as a more developed country is the fact that they are quite partial. Now, let's think about it. America cannot continue to ride on the backs of the French to protect their, that's of course America's interest on the continent. By that, I'm sure Dr. Sako was saying that America cannot act only as and when or where it pleases the French in Africa. Now, let's go back in history a bit. French policies towards the Cameroon were developed in the 1950s by a post war political leadership that sought primarily to guarantee their own survival as a nation and to uphold their status as a world power. Now, the French also advised Ahidjo in Fombam in 1961 to reject every common sense proposal by the people of the Southern Cameroons for a genuine union of two states of equal status. The French drafted the fraudulent 1961 La République du Cameroon constitution that was never ratified as required by the Southern Cameroon House of Assembly. The French president ordered Ahidjo to abolish the fictitious federation between La République du Cameroon and Southern Cameroon.
Now, whenever there was a call for dialogue with the people of Southern Cameroon's Amazonia, whether it's the AAC 1 and 2 of 1993, 1994, Africa Court of Human and People's Rights in Banjul, the French would move to reassure their puppet regime in Yaoundé that they don't have to cave in. You can imagine. For instance, President Mitterrand advised Paul Biya that he should not accept federalism, that in case of any uprising, Paul Biya should be prepared to use that as the alibi to crush the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonians and seal our fate as their conquered slave. Obviously, their hope was that in the event of war, La République du Cameroon will crush Ambazonians like flies, as they did to the UPC-led nationalist resistance in the 1950s. Again, in 2017, President Macron Africa met with Paul Biya and asked him to send his military to declare war on the Southern Cameroonians. Little did they know that the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonians would rise as we have done.
All right. At some point in that speech, President Sako said that we are not trying to succeed. He said, we are a sovereign people. We don't need a referendum. The UN knew this truth and gave us a plebiscite instead of a referendum in 1961. Now, he also spoke to the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, and he asked him a question. In that question, he says, you posted on Twitter not too long ago that there shall be visa restriction to Cameroonians. Now, who are obstructing peace? Now, he says, I wonder who you had in mind when you tweeted. He says, considering that Biya is the chief perpetrator of the war against the people of the Southern Cameroons. He says he's the one obstructing peace.
Well, President Sako reminded them that the administration under President Donald Trump cut some military aid to Paul Biya's killer regime used to kill Amazonians. He removed La République du Cameroon from AGOA and more. Have the conditions which led to the previous American position against the Biya regime change. And now he calls on African leaders present in Washington, D.C. to tell Biya that you cannot embark on annihilating a sovereign people who decided to join you freely without war, just as you cannot kill your abused fiancée if she decides to not continue with the marriage. Well, here's a video of the president.
Mr. President of the United States of America, my president, the organizers of the U.S. Africa Summit, 22 fellow African heads of state here present, dear international observers, I want to thank the United States of America for organizing the second US Africa Summit. This is a laudable action to revitalize partnership and alliances with African countries. I understand this summit will continue efforts to strengthen ties with African nations that are under severe pressure by their local populations to review the significance or not of traditional alliances that stem from our colonial heritage. We, the people of the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, regret our absence from the ongoing US Africa Summit. This would have been a golden opportunity for the US to affirm her historical vote at the United in favor of the independence resolution on the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia on April 21st, 1961. I have been obliged by the people of the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia to bypass this error of omission by addressing the US Africa Summit as the uninvited 55th nation of Africa, albeit from an observer's perspective. It is our hope that the summit will be a moment of sincere introspection around the true causes of anti-Western sentiments sweeping across the African continent today. A post-colonial philosophy that made most alliances with Africa and the West look like a beautiful girl toasted around by suitors or bidders, and whose will does not count, led to the establishment of transactional alliances and not genuine partnership alliances. That kind of posture reminds the African psyche of the infamous era of slavery. The Africa of today is in need of direct mutual beneficial political economic partnership alliances with America on grounds of respect for each other. Africa doesn't need babysitting today. Africa doesn't need people to decide for her. Africa doesn't need systems and alliances that work more for the good of others than our own people, and leaders who appear to serve foreign interests more than national interests. This schoolmaster approach by the West may have worked for a while, but right now it is not working for Africa. The youth, and that means 60 to 75% of the 1.2 billion people in Africa, are asking why the richest continent remains the most backward today. Instead of frowning at voices like mine on the continent, instead of giving band-aid solutions, why don't we try out a cheaper option, which is one of the direct strategic partnership with the people of the continent, a Marshall Plan, for example. I said the people of the continent, not the leaders. There is a remarkable difference between the people of Africa and the political leadership in Africa today. We voted to join La République du Cameroon as two gentlemen, but the French pushed Amadou Ahidjo to opt for reunification instead of unification, and to go for annexation instead of equality, and adopt a unitary state instead of a federation. The French also advised Ahidjo in Fumban in 1961 to reject every common sense proposal by the people of the Southern Cameroons for a genuine union of two states of equal status. The French then helped to draft the fraudulent 1961 constitution that was never ratified as required by Southern Cameroon's House of Assembly in Boya. The French president, Pompidou, ordered Ahidjo to abolish the fictitious federation between the Republic du Cameroon and the Southern Cameroon Ambazonia in 1972 through a fraudulent referendum. And then the French finally advised Paul Biya to finalize the annexation project of the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia by reverting to their former name before, which they had before, La République du I think America is trying to reach out to a sleazy dictator that is unreachable. Whenever you send envoys to reach him, it's impossible. Our concern should be the message from President Biden to dictator Paul Biya. I also want to caution the recent prosecution of some of our comrades in the US. It is not an action premeditated by the US government against Amazonia. It is a matter brought before the court by certain individuals residing in the United States. I urge Amazonians to contribute to our legal defense fund and do so now, and accompany our comrades to court, whether in Maryland, in Kansas, or Minnesota. It is never a crime to provide defense to somebody in court. Even the government does it. All for one, one for all. The verdict of these cases will establish a law that will influence opinions and guarantee our greater protection within the framework of existing laws in America. Remember, this is the United States, where you are innocent until proven guilty. The innocent should do the right thing and know that the enemy wanted to do us evil, that our God will surely use it for our good in this trouble. God bless our beautiful country, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
All right, thank you to Mr. President. Of course, we have the Vice President here. He wanted to talk about this earlier, but I remember I distracted him from talking about this until now. We feel the peak of the moment. Mr. Vice President, please join your own voice to make the statement of the President louder and clearer.
I think the president articulated his points quite well. The fact that we weren't invited was a total disappointment because we are the 55th nation of the world. I think what the president was trying to remind President Biden of is he should go back and look at his own records, look at the record of the vote for his camp, for his vote for our independence. America voted for 1608, and we want I think he was kind of bringing that to their attention that they should actually honor that vote. And the president also made mention of the fact that, you know what I mean, it will be futile for the United States to attempt to solve the problem of Africa through the dictators that have actually subjugated the people and provided bad governance for the people. The best thing for the United States to do is to empower the people themselves through engaging the people. But come back to Amazonia, the president was very clear about it, that you know what I mean, with his statement to Secretary of State Blinken, you know what I mean, who were you talking to when you made that statement, that when you sent out that tweet? Because if the greatest perpetrators were actually invited and they are sitting right now in the White House with your president, then that is quite hypocritical. So it was a rhetorical question, but that's a question that Secretary Blinken really has to answer. There is no one worse than Paul Biya in Africa right now. Paul Biya, like he said, is worse than Idi Amin, is worse than he named a lot of leaders. I listened to the speech very carefully yesterday, and I just listened to some excerpts now. And I think the president did a great job to actually bring this to the consciences of the people in that conference. When it comes to African leaders who are present, they have a way of let's just say supporting one another, especially when they themselves are dictators. What is it? You know, the president made mention of the fact that there's a new generation of Africans now. And I think the Biden administration will do good if they actually invest in the people, not the dictatorship itself. So I think it was a great speech. You know, it's really hard for me to go and pick every single point of the speech. If you ask me if you quote a specific thing that he said, you know, I can maybe elaborate on. But I think in general, the president actually came out strong. The president, it was like a little protest. Like, how come Ambazonia was not invited because to us, we are an independent nation. You know what I mean? We are just under occupation. So the president he did a great job with that speech. So I think that's all I want to say about that for now. Except you know, if you have something specific about the speech that you want to ask.
All right, there are a whole lot of specific questions we would definitely ask, but now let me ask. So far, has there been reaction to the president's speech from across the world, from probably other African leaders? Have they also found it necessary to, probably air their thought? I mean, the 55th African nation should have been invited, but he wasn't invited. Ambazonia wasn't invited. But then, of course, we did our best. We sent a speech. Now, do you think that this speech has gotten to the appropriate quarters?
Years.
I would think so. You know, the thing is, the one thing that we should always pride ourselves on is that we have done a really good job articulating some of our points using our television platforms and Twitter and stuff like that. A lot of tweets have gone out already from hundreds of Amazonians, and politicians in this country and all over the world read those tweets and they say these things. This station is broadcasted live on Homefront, and you know what I mean. Someone might say, well, it is not broadcasted all over the world. Well, it's on Facebook and also on Homefront. There are diplomatic missions right now on Homefront. Do you think the ambassador, the French ambassador to Cameroon is not watching you? Do you think the German ambassador to Cameroon is not watching you? No, they are all watching us. They know what we're doing. And their job is to inform their hierarchy of what we are saying. So when the president addresses the nation, everyone on Homefront listens. The interview you are doing today, I bet you when I leave from here, I'll be getting calls from Homefront. People telling me, oh my God, those two ladies were great. Where did you guys find them? Mr. Vice President, you did good. People listen to us. But the thing is, how is it going to come back to us? How is it going to come back to us? How are we going to benefit from what they are going to espouse? The thing is that diplomacy is always slow. There are African countries that I believe actually sympathize with us. But guess what? There is no way an African country might actually just come out and recognize us. They are waiting for a leeway. African countries have always adopted a spirit of being a follower. They never take the lead to do anything. They never do. Look at a country like Ghana. John Guffoncha visited Kwame Nkrumah when he was Prime Minister of Southern Cameroon. So Ghana knows, the government of Ghana knows that our country was absorbed. Even before Jerry Rawlings died, he said it. How come Ghana is not coming out and recognizing us? Look at our big brother Nigeria. What are they doing? They're actually working with La Republic to stop us from doing what we are doing. Well, I guess the president is just going to keep articulating these points, and we as a government, we're just going to keep making our points very clear that we will never give up, because this is something that was taken from us. It is not something that we can just walk away from. So we are pleading with the United States. I join my voice to that of the president to plead with President Biden to look at the picture very clearly. He's dealing with a man who has committed more atrocities than even the Idi Amin of Uganda. So it is time for Biden to apply that same spirit that he applied when he was senator, fighting for the right of Black South Africans. I really enjoyed him. When you go back and watch his videos, how he made the point that apartheid was an evil system that subjugated Black people. You know what I mean? That is when, I fell in love with Biden as a politician. So where is that Biden of yesterday? That is what we are trying to inspire out of him. And guess what? I think, I know that we are kind of working on sending out correspondences all over the world and even to those African countries, reminding them of their responsibility to Ambazonia. Because, like I said, like someone once said, you cannot turn your eye when people are being subjugated and killed just because it's not happening to your own people. If America can do it for Ukraine, America can do it for Ambazonia. And if other African countries think they can just sit around, enjoy whatever $55 billion that Americans are pledging to help Africa with, and not look at what is really happening to our people, I think will be a mistake. Because you know what? Like Martin Luther King said, injustice everywhere is injustice everywhere. So let's just hope that they are listening. That's all we can do. We can just hope, because there is no way we can go to the White House and knock the door and say, hey, we want to come in. But slowly but surely, I'm pretty sure that the doors are going to open someday and our country is going to be free. Thank you.
Slowly but surely, slowly but surely. Mr. Vice President, speaking of points, you talked about, different points just now. We all heard the president's speech, remarkable as always, and he talked, it was really remarkable as always, and you just talked about, the speech getting to a lot of ears, as many ears as possible. His address, what is the significance of this address, first of all, to the international community and then to Ambazonians?
I think he painted a very good picture of our cause to the international community. He brought it to their attention that the resolve of the Ambazonian people to see their country free is unshakable. I think in a sense too, what he's also doing is telling the Ambazonian people never to give up. And also reminding those who are just here to cause confusion to understand that, you don't fight a war with many heads. The interim government is the primary entity in this revolution. I think the president and this interim government have actually done more to actually bring La Republique almost to its knees. If it weren't for the divisions and that have been imposed in our revolution from people probably who have been coerced by La Republique to do so, I think we would have gone further than we are now. So I think in a sense, in a very smart way, the president was also saying that we also need justice and that the world should also turn around and look at us. But I want to ask something of mine. I had a conversation the other day with a comrade who called me and told me, why all this division? Why can't you all come together and form one thing and just be in just unity? My answer to him was, the unity is always a good thing, but it must be unity of purpose. If two people are fighting for the same goal and they have different ways of fighting, then what happens? They can actually collaborate and fight for that thing. However, I asked him a question. I said, you people always talk about unity. Let the IG unite with everybody. Let everybody come together. Let me ask you something. There's only one IG, but there are so many groups. There is Crisano groups, Marianta's group, Ayabacho's group, Boherbert's group. You can name it. All of them, Fontaine, but all of them have groups. I said, how come they cannot unite all of them? Let all of them unite. If all of them were to unite without the IG and start doing the same thing or even more than what President Sako is doing, then the interim government will become irrelevant. So why would you want us to unite with a confederation of losers, people who have not done anything? If you have 18 groups in Ambazonia struggling to defeat the interim government, and the interim government is still standing, the interim government is the only entity actually doing its best to feed the refugees in Nigeria. The interim government is the only one who has the formidable structure that the president talked about. The interim government is the only one who has actually put things in perspective for La Republique du Cameroon on home front. The interim government is the only one who has actually done all these things until you guys came and disrupted home front. If all of you united cannot defeat the interim government, then why not just rally behind the interim government and give us your support to finish the job? He dropped the phone and went away because that was a succinct answer for him to digest. People keep talking about, let's unite. Unite with who? Go and unite yourselves. Go and form your confederation of losers and see if you can do better than the interim government. So I will leave it at that, ladies. Let's move on for now.
Don't leave us yet, please, Mr. Vice President. Now, you made mention of peace and unity. Now, I want to know, when you talk about unity, I'm sure collaboration also comes in place. Now, what more should the interim government do at this point to probably enhance more platform that can contain more Amazonians and get them involved in these coming from what you just said about the call you got, yes, what can the interim government do? Like there was a time I was talking to Dr. Mungu and I asked him, I said, you know, we have seen the light. And he said, yes. I said, so since we've seen the light, how can we lead and allow others to join? Now you have mentioned something like that again. And I'm asking you again, how can we get more Amazonians involved when we talk about peace, unity, and collaboration?
Okay. I think the desire for power should be rescinded. You know, when you are a vice president, their primary responsibility is to serve the president's administration and the president. Your responsibility is not to attract power to yourself and try to circumvent what the president is doing. Your job is to articulate the president's agenda, be his closest collaborator and his advisor. The one thing I've noticed is that everybody wants to be everything. You have a secretary of communication like Chris Anu, he wants to be president. You have people who want to be something they are not. If you go back to the beginning of this interim government, when they went to Zaria and decided to bring all the groups together to form this interim government, somebody like Bo Herbert is a seasoned journalist who had been a great journalist in La République for a very, very long time. Speaks very well, has a great voice. But when Sissoco Ayutabe became president, they were trying to get him to be the Secretary of Communication because that's what he's best at doing. He refused because even though he's good at communication, no, he wanted the top job. He wanted to be president. Sissoco Ayutabe tried to bring Ayabacho to be the leader of the defense of Ambazonia because he claimed that he had the groups down there. Because back then the interim government didn't have any groups down there fighting. They didn't support anybody fighting down there. Ayabacho had been there a little bit before. He refused because even though he claims that he can fight, he wanted the top job. So the problem is that people don't know how to wait their time. People don't know how to serve. People don't understand that just because you serve someone else doesn't mean that you are inadequate. Just because you serve someone else doesn't mean that, you know what I mean, if the responsibility falls upon you, you wouldn't be able to do it. We should learn how to follow. We should learn how to come together under one leader. You know what I mean? But how do you get our people to do that? You just have to keep reminding them of the consequences of certain actions that have been taken by our comrades. Okay, for instance, the reason why a lot of these people are struggling, the people who had left and created other things, is because there's one factor that they are missing. There's one thing that they are missing. For instance, if Dr. Sako were to fall today and they were to take over everything, let's say if President Sako said, you know what, I'm tired of this denigration, I am leaving, and we all say we are leaving this thing to you guys, it's still not going to work. You know why? Because the people who are contributing to this revolution under President Sako have developed that trust for him. They like the way he talks, they like the way he operates, they like the way he does things, they like his initiatives. So if somebody else were to come in who doesn't gain from that support that President Sako is getting, a lot of people who are contributing to this interim government will not contribute to them. Why is it that Chris Anu cannot contribute, cannot raise money to send to home from? Why are they struggling? Why is Maranta struggling? Why are all of them struggling? It's because the Ambazonian people don't trust them. That is just a fact. So that said, if they really, really love Ambazonia, just imagine for 1 second that they all come in and say, you know what? We have our different affiliations, but guess what? We have one interim government. We're going to stand behind our president. That would have given a lot of impetus to this revolution. It would have actually, enabled us to graduate from this stigma from the international community that we are so divided. But people are more interested in their own personal advancement than the entire revolution. Imagine when Mandela was in prison, he became more popular than Oliver Tambo because he had been such a good prisoner, I would say. He fought for his people, but he never tried to usurp authority from the free leadership. So he became much loved by his people. The international community knew him more. Nobody really talked about Oliver Tambo, but he always maintained that his president is Oliver Tambo. And at the end, he was the one who became president. So let's go back to Ayub Tabe in prison. If Ayub Tabe had gone to prison after he was arrested and maintained that, you know what, I cannot talk to you, La République du Cameroon. I don't have my freedom. There are people out there who are executing my office. There is someone out there who is the acting president, as Dr. Sako was. And if he maintained that position, that every time Echo or all these other people who came to him, took him from his cell to go talk to negotiate, he told them the same story, that I cannot talk to you guys. I don't have control over anything on home front. I don't have control over any money. And my freedom has been taken from me. I am just a prisoner now. And they have chosen an acting president. Everything must go through him. Can you imagine the kind of popularity he will have today within Ambazonia? But because of his greed, he has now become a laughing stock to some people. That is not supposed to be. People should learn how to let other people lead if it's their time. If the president were to tell me today I'm no longer the vice president, am I supposed to make a fuss of it? I'm not supposed to make a fuss of it. I will just look at it that the president maybe thinks someone else will do a better job. That's it. So we as Africans, not only Ambazonia, should learn how to do that. That is the problem with Africa. That's a problem with a lot of countries in Africa. And it also reflects in our own revolution, in our own revolutionary construct, that people think they are the ones who have to lead. You know what I mean? So they can't follow somebody else. Even if that person is doing the right thing and moving this revolution forward, they will say, no, I don't care if he's doing if what he's doing is right. I should be the one who is. No. So it's good. Unity is good, but what are we united with? Are we united to follow them to La République, or are we uniting to go to a home front, to Ambazonia? So I don't know. I hope I didn't take much of your time, but it's a very tricky question. So we just gotta keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, but you know, Mr. Vice President, you know what the world has agreed on when it comes to politics? You know, they say it's a game of interest. Just maybe they are seeing it as politics instead of a revolution, which also stands differently. So what if, is there any other thing that, you know, the interim government could do to make them understand that this is not totally a political thing? We are trying to regain our sovereignty. It is not a political move. Rather, we are in a revolution. Is it possible that that clarity can be made so that the interest can be reduced and the collaboration enhanced?
I think we have made that point over and over. Even you just made it, and I'm pretty sure they're listening to you, right? So we have been making it over and over in our even those who were within our government. We Christian was with us, Marianta was with us, Abunga was with us. But the problem is that it's all about power and control. Let me say this. As vice president, if I were to go to the president and I tell the president, Mr. President, I'm giving you an ultimatum. You must fire this Secretary of State, or you must fire that person, or else. What does that tell you? Because that's what I'm saying. It's all about power and control. People trying to do what they are not supposed to do. You know, so the people who were disgruntled, who left, we have always told them that if you love Ambazonia, and if you can also open your eyes and realize that this interim government is the only entity right now who can actually do a better job in bringing freedom to our people, pick up your phone and call me. Pick up your phone and call Mr. President and say, Mr. President, you know what? We've had our differences, but I think it's time for me to dissolve whatever I have out there and come back. We will welcome them. Yes, we may not give them government positions in government, but at the same time, we can still work with them. They can give us some advice on how to do things and stuff like that. So, but the thing is, greed will not let them do that, because people want to be what they are not, and what they are not supposed to be. So, we just got to keep doing our best. Our focus is home front. As long as the people, our fighters on home front, can be brought to order and to be made to understand that, You know what I mean? It is their lives that are in danger. We are fine. We can talk to them every day and say, hey, you know what? Just like we have worked with you for a very long time. All these people have come and told you that they are something they are not. And if they are something, how come they are not sponsoring treating the wounded down there? I just got a call today from somebody who is wounded, pleading for treatment. How come they are not calling the other people? It's because they know that they don't have anything. These are just people who just make noise. So please, it is not our sole responsibility it's not only our responsibility to reach out for people to join us. People themselves are grown-ups. People themselves who claim to be revolutionaries can look at the revolution in its entirety and say, hey, you know what? I think I am wrong. The things that I'm doing is actually hurting the revolution. Maybe I should reach out and see how we can work things out and just follow one leader. Because you cannot have a revolution with so many leaders. Everybody sending correspondence, and then you go over here. This one say I'm president. This one say I'm president. The only thing that distinguishes us from them right now is the work that we do. But they also have a responsibility to the Ambazonian people, because the Ambazonian people are watching them very seriously. When we didn't go to Canada and they went to Canada, it was quite telling. The Ambazonian people noticed that. So the decisions that we take will be judged by the Ambazonian people. So it's really difficult for us to go and start knocking doors and asking people to come back, because first of all, you don't know what their motives are. You don't know if they are agents of the Republic or not. So they should actually graduate from whatever activity they are carrying on right now and come back under the umbrella of the interim government. We welcome them, and they can join the LGAs and start contributing so we can prosecute this war. This is a very difficult topic, because we are dealing with the human mind here. How do you convince somebody who is so bent on destroying you? How do you convince somebody who actually wants to be who you are? You know what I mean? You two are there. If you have a lady who wants to look like you, but God made her different, how do you reconcile with that person? You cannot take your face and give to that person. So they want to be President Sako, but they cannot. They can never be President Sako. You know what I mean? So let them just work with us and really make things better for our people on home front and stop causing all this division that they are causing. So we are going to keep doing our best. My phone lines are always open. There is nobody in this revolution who will call me and I don't answer my phone. If Marietta calls me today, I will talk to her. If Chris Hano calls me, I will talk to him. But I will never compromise my position to his position, which I believe is a flawed position. Because if you are going to Canada, that means you're actually destroying the revolution, because Canada is one Cameroon. The Swiss-led process is a process that the international community endorses. So based on their actions, they cannot lead me. I will have to follow my conscience, because I know that only a genuine dialogue between two states of equal status can ever bring a resolution to this conflict of ours. Not discussion with La République here and there. Okay, ladies, I think I have a very important meeting. So, any more questions?
Sir.
I think I would like to.
Thank you so much for being here, first of all, with us. Okay, maybe you definitely have something to say to Ambazonians. And while you're saying that to them, you could as well address the fact that some people who are mostly addressed as the green, red, and yellow Ambazonians went out on a protest. And we wonder how that move was strategic and why the interim government opted differently. Well, you could just speak a few minutes on that and then give your final remarks to Ambazonian listening to you.
Well, we have, even within our own ranks, my fellow Ambazonians, we've had some people question the decision of the interim government not to endorse any march in Washington. I think the president's stance was that, we cannot recycle what we did in 2018, because that was a different situation. In 2018, we're still in the phase of, we're still trying to sensitize the world about our plight. But I think we have already done that. There is no diplomatic house in the world that who doesn't know about us. We did that. We did marches, went to the United Nations. We marched in front of embassies. We did it in Europe, in Britain, everywhere. So what the president was saying is that we have more pressing issues. And what are these issues? We have to contribute money to defend our comrades who are in court. We have to raise money to bring support to our people who are fighting down there. We need money to help our refugees. So we are a practical government. So if you see, people don't understand that it is easier for someone who has no responsibility over anybody to suggest that we should just leave and go to Washington and go for a march when we have work to do. What are we going to Washington for? The president made a very powerful speech, and I believe his speech actually made more impact to this process than whatever they were doing in Washington, because I watched some of the videos on Facebook. There were maybe 15 of them chanting, looking all desperate, and I don't know. It's just really sad. And even when Paul Biya came here, we saw some supposed Anglophones, people who are supposed to be Southern Cameroonians, even those, some of them who actually were with us one time, actually welcoming Paul Biya with the Cameroonian flag. So this revolution can be treacherous. So that's why we have to tread very carefully. People change their mind. People change as we go along. So you're working with somebody today to free your country. Tomorrow that person decides that, oh, no, you know what? I'm going to Cameroon. He's not going to come and tell you. He or she is not going to come and tell you that. You are just going to see it from their action. So I want to let Ambazonians know that this administration's decision not to recycle the ways of the things that we did in 2018, like going to protest, it was the right decision, because you know what? It would have sent a message to the international community and even to America that we are fighting for regime change in Cameroon. That's not what we are here for. We are here for recognition, for the recognition of the sovereign state of Ambazonia and its admission into the United Nations as the 55th nation of the world. Going to protest in Washington is as though we are protesting a dictator. No, we are not here for Biya. We are here to free the Southern Cameroons. Biya can stay there for the next 100 years. It doesn't matter to us. So, my fellow Ambazonians, thank you for tuning in today. I wish I had more time for us to maybe chat a little bit, but maybe I'll have some more time next time when I come in. And Anchor Ladies, I want to thank you for anchoring this show today. And I hope everyone stays blessed, and God bless Ambazonia. Keep doing the work.
Thank you so much.
We're going to go home soon.
God indeed bless Ambazonia.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President. God indeed bless Ambazonia. Thank you for your time here. It was indeed an honor.
Thank you.
We'll move on with the news.
Mr. President of the United States of America.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best.
All right, and our final report for today. President Paul Biya blames development aid for bad roads. No electricity, no clean water in his country. He says it's development aid. All right, of course, you already know that it is said that the shoes always take the blame when the dancer is dancing well. While the colonial La Republic, the current government under the rulership of Paul Biya, has failed in all aspects as development is concerned. Well, at the current U.S. African summit, Paul Biya has admitted and blamed the nature of development aid for the snail pace of development in his country. Well, it says, why must we depend solely on development aid from elsewhere? With the natural resources and endorsement his country have, why should he blame that?
Well, at the US Africa summit going on in the United States of America, Paul Biya, the ruler of La Republic du Cameroon, has used the occasion as an opportunity to justify the poor developmental level in his country. Speaking on Wednesday, December 14th, Biya accuses the strings and protocol around development aid as being the reason why his country is not yet at a reasonable developmental level. So, to be the reason he's unable to provide roads, potable water, and electricity for his citizens is because of developmental aid protocols. Well, here is an excerpt of his speech. And its Africa remains overly dependent on official development assistance, which no longer seems to meet our needs. He says, generally speaking, the legal framework governing access to funding is extremely constraining, heightening of fiscal and institutional stability risk. As an example of such constraints, we are sometimes required by investors to mortgage some natural resources. The financing models and instruments used further contributes to the re-export of capital through loans. Without movement of funds to the continent, but with inevitable foreign exchange outflows during reimbursement.
Oh well, just a reminder, Biya has been the president of La Republic du Cameroon since 1982. He is now 40 years and counting as president. Is this his 40 years reign? Well, in this his 40-year reign, citizens only have feelings of regret and frustration. Well, right after the break, we'll bring you the editorial.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
In our editorial of today, we get to the last Canada Swiss-led process to prospect and Bridget Moying's conclusion of Diplomacy Masterclass made simple, identifying and choosing a negotiator, the SLP Swiss-led process or CDN2 Ottawa. Canada Swiss-led process BAP's Swiss-led process was financed and backed by the Canadian government, the same that Yaoundé contacted to host direct talks, dubbed Talks About Talks. Whereas Yaoundé invited their host to observe the direct discussions, the Canadians, on the other hand, are said to have brought on board other observers, the Swiss HD, their prime partners, the US Peace Institute, the UN, and more. If it is true, then Ottawa has the potential to mutate into another internationally mediated process, the Swiss-led process too. What was agreed upon from the very onset with the Swiss-led process 1. This potential outcome, however, would not be what Yaoundé went in for. Rather, it will be an outcome dictated not by the surrendering enablers and overrated Amazonian activists, but by the intimidated presence of the observing international community. If Canada accepts to play mediator, we may return to the Canada-Swiss-led process assisted by other facilitators. In this event, what they gain in the first. How much has Ambazonia lost in human life, financial resources, and time? Was it worth it? At least the ego of some would have been assuaged. Well, prospects, unlike the preceding, based on facts, prospects in conjecture and analyses informed by the previous treacherous activities of those colluding with the enemy in Ottawa behind our backs. We know by his actions that Ayaba Cho Lucas long turned his back on Buya. His treachery, the killings of the Amazonian Restoration Forces by his thugs, are an infallible pointer. When no longer Ebenezer long called off the struggle when he called for a ceasefire and went to Africa. There is no military strategy by which soldiers are asked to put down their guns to win the war. The interim government care appointment of the Federalist, Herman J. Cohen, is an absolute indicator of their opposition to the Amazonian statehood quest. There is absolutely nothing in diplomatic doublespeak that suggests Ambassador Herman J. Cohen meant independence restoration when he tweeted in favor of federalism for 4 years. There was nothing in the Sydney and Toronto gathering of supposed restorationists and unionists that suggests that win-win outcome resolution points to anything but capitulation. The systematic opposition by the Ottawans to all interim government initiatives, including timely ghost towns and lockdowns, are sure indicators. The fact that these individuals have shelved all their earlier baseless objections to the Swiss-led process and have engaged Yaoundé directly points to only one thing, that they are not for Ambazonia. We already know that many of them, including but not limited to Ayuk Tabe's interim government care, want to use the talks to get out of prison. Our compatriots in prison should not take our sympathy to them for granted. From the confusion, selective information Ottawans choose to send out, it is alleged that they have reached a series of agreements with Yaoundé foremost amongst them. The release of all Ambazonian prisoners of conscience, general amnesty to the Ambazonian asset, and go freely, the withdrawal of La République du Cameroon troops to the barracks, an end to ghost towns and lockdowns, school resumption, and more, a return to normalcy. Why are these not being communicated officially to the peoples of both nations? Will these agreements be implemented behind our backs? They have let us know that a third round of talks comes up next week, but do not tell us what either party has to do in the meantime to move their talks forward. What must Ayangwe's delegation do before the next meeting? What does Yaoundé do in a way of implementing the agreement upon before the next round? Implementation is what matters the most and where matters come to a head. Whereas Yaoundé's honesty cannot be vouched for even by themselves, we know that Ayangwe's delegation cannot effect any of the points they have committed themselves to unless they continue to kill the genuine Ambazonian restoration forces to prepare a collapse. The disarming of Ambazonian restoration forces in Batibo last week by Ayabacho's ADF kidnapping gang must be seen in this line. Is it not common knowledge that the interim government care of Ayuk Tabe, John Mbakuro's consortium, and the AGOF-C are officially partnered and in league? How many rounds of talks did they need before condemning the Swiss-led process? Well, in conclusion, authoritatively, Bridget Nguyen can state that the same Canadian government that provided funding for the Swiss-led will not today turn around and support an internal settlement of a problem that falls under the ambit of international law, irrespective of whatever the cost in the Yangwei team may have to concede and irrespective of whatever assurances they may make. This is so because Canada and the rest of the international community are well informed, perhaps better informed, on who is who in Ambazonia and what exactly the Ambazonian people want. At the end of the day, common sense shall prevail and Yaoundé shall return to the negotiation table with the people of Ambazonia led by their legitimate leaders with or without the Ottawa gang. When this happens, the new old mediator will have to go back to President Sako, who controls the territory for genuine negotiations to start. In this event, all agreements, confidence-building measures agreed upon in Ottawa with whomever will have to be reviewed and made enforceable by the endorsement of the mediator. The international community and Ambazonians people-led leadership before business can start. That will be people power. That is diplomacy. We are the worst to happen. The final decision will be ours, the people's, to make, to surrender, or to endure to the end. Independence, restoration. Our position is well known. Independence and nothing else. For now, we are watching and must up the game on the home front. Ambazonian forces who have been misled to lay low should wake up from sleep before Yaoundé takes them unawares, as in Batibo recently. Those who ask them to lay low and wait for amnesties, prisoner release, are the same working hard to hand them over to the. That is the only way that enablers can honor their Ottawa commitments. Well, beware at this juncture of the Ambazonian quest for independence. Intense heat on the home front is what we need to propel the speed at which La République du Cameroon should get to the negotiation table and not the laying down of weapons. It is better for Ambazonia that our compatriots in the prisons come out as heroes rather than through the enemy's grace and magnanimity. If they come out through the latter, the consequences of the struggle will be too high to contemplate, even if not irreparable. Now, her thoughts about diplomacy masterclass made simple, identifying and choosing a negotiator, the SLP or CDN to Ottawa in its entirety is what you've just gotten. We've come to the end of this beautifully written piece by Bridget Muyang Fielding and also the end of our editorial for today. If you want more of such articles, kindly visit our website at www.abcambertv.com for more. Subscribe, become a club member, and a part of this winning strategy. Find out payment details on your screen. I am Star Smart reporting for Undaunted ABC.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
Right, thank you so much, Star Smart, for that editorial. With that editorial as well, we've come to the end of tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, we'll try to remind you of the highlights of our major stories.
The interim government has built a formidable instrument that can run any storm, says President Sacco. Unemployment would be as rain brings out the bad in youth. They have raped and exploited cheap labor and promised salaries to victims not paid.
All right, tonight we also told you that Paul Biya blames development aid for bad roads, no electricity, no clean waters in La Republic de Cameroon. Also today, a truck crushes all passengers on board a vehicle at Musaka Boya local government area, Fako County. Also, we told you that Close has received stick beating from angry DDR inmates. And that was it for tonight on Undaunted, bringing you the news on church stories. On behalf of Star Smart here and the entire Undaunted crew, we say thank you for tuning in. I am Oni Obala.
We'll leave you with ABC Amber TV images. Good night and God bless you.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.